Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 73 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you to all the new listeners who are reaching out, especially Lisa V. Reached out and had some questions, and new practitioners. Thank you so much for trusting me and reaching out and talking with me. Some housekeeping before we start. I had spoken in previous episodes about the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, a system I was designing to do the forms for free, a simplified version. Well, as it turns out, it's very complicated, and developers don't always complete the work they started. A lot of fighting back and forth, but I realized that's something that's going to be too big to handle. But the toolbox is still going to happen. I've registered the domain at immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. If you go there right now, I'm kind of doing a drudge report for immigration news, having links and recent information, as well as having a centralized location for this podcast and videos and information I collect about immigration law and the practice of immigration, all in one place, so you can go there and access it easily. So the website for that is immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Also, I want to thank Giselle Carson for the wonderful podcast she did. A lot of you tuned in and listened to her special podcast about the O visa. She'll be coming back and talking about more visa categories, especially that are within her expertise and her experience. But that's a great addition to the podcast team. Without further ado, let's get it started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. Okay, so I want to start, as I do many podcast episodes, talking about the travel ban. So this is a recent encounter I had in a conversation I had. So I had a case where it was parents of a U.S. citizen. They actually went to the interview in the U.S. Embassy in Abu Dhabi, and this is before the travel ban, and they had to deal with administrative processing. So that was going on for a year, and all of a sudden the travel ban kicked in, and then they succumbed to that. So then the issue was, should I file a waiver application? Should I do this, that? And I kept holding off on it for about 6 or 9 months because there's no guidance as to what to do. Now, a lot of people were submitting it, saying we should submit this and that, but I didn't want to create problems. I mean, frankly, I was afraid if I submit a waiver, it'll bring more attention to the case and potentially could cause a denial. But eventually, last week, I decided, okay, I just made, there was discussion on the AILA listserv about how to present it because the officers were getting annoyed. I had cases that went to the interview that were subject to the travel ban, and the officers weren't accepting. They physically didn't want to even touch the waiver application, and some were getting mad, saying, we decide if there's a waiver application and we submit it. It's not for the lawyer or for the applicant to do that. So stop telling lawyers to do this and that. So that was the information coming in pretty much from Yerevan, Armenia, Ankara, Turkey, and Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. Now, I've heard other news from Syria and Yemen and some other consulates. They do accept them, and those have been approved. I haven't heard of real Iranian immigrant visas being approved. So I submitted by email what I said was information that'll help you. There's a great attorney who deals with this, Jay Garrison, said instead of directly saying doing a waiver application, which annoys the officer, saying we're providing information to help in the decision making. And so you just send in facts that could potentially help your case. Frankly, when you do a DS-260 and all the application package, I'm like, how much more could you provide that proves the prongs that you need to provide for the travel ban? But so I sent that in, information about the clients, and I got a reply saying it's not necessary. We don't review this information for deciding on the waiver. We're going to review the documents as they are and make a decision. And I said, okay, we kind of back and forth saying, does that mean like the waiver is approved and you're just waiting administrative processing, or what's going on? They're like, no, we'll let you know. We'll just let you know what's going on. We're still trying to make a decision. And I said, listen, could you give like some sort of information in a public forum so that we can all know what's going on? Because there's so many rumors and stories about this and that, what's going on. No one knows. And they said, no, don't send waivers. It's not the place a lawyer or applicant do it. We do this all internally. Sorry, this information is given on handouts that we give to people after the interview. Well, my clients had their interview before the travel ban, so they didn't have that piece of paper. And I've read the papers they give after the travel ban, and it doesn't give much information either. And some embassies do accept them and review them and talk to clients about it. So the conclusion is that, like most immigration law right now, there is no answer. It's unfortunately getting very difficult to practice in this field because there are no answers as to what's going on. Honestly, I don't think they even know because these things are just being made up as they go along. But it makes a very difficult atmosphere to practice law and for the clients. Today, a couple hours ago, I got a case return it was a marriage adjustment case, and they said that the credit card wasn't properly completed authorization form. So I checked the form. All the credit card numbers were correct for the filing fee. Those signed. Everything was correct. A day before that, I had a naturalization case. The credit card number went through. While I was looking at the paper, I checked my my credit card account that I used for filings, and right then 2 other marriage cases went through in the same Chicago lockbox. So I don't know why this one wouldn't, but it frustrates the client. And, I sent them a copy of the documents they sent. I said, this is all correct. But, in their heart, they might think I did something wrong. So it makes the lawyer look really bad. Potentially could lead to bad reviews, all that kind of stuff. And it's just because of carelessness, I'm lucky this wasn't a case that had a deadline or something like that or status falling out. But if they did, what would happen if the case got returned? Potentially, it could look like malpractice, even though I did everything correctly, just because they're not paying attention. And it's hard, how do you not pay attention to the credit card authorization form? It's 2 papers. I had another case. A green card marriage case has taken so long that the EAD AP was about to expire in 2 or 3 months, so I sent the renewal in for each. The EAD, I got the receipt back. The advanced parole, I didn't. Client sends me an email with their receipt, says, I got a receipt for the advanced parole I-131, but it says the G28 was not submitted with the application. So I went and immediately pulled up. This is what you have to do. Before you submit anything to the government and you put in that folder or the package for mailing it out, scan it immediately and then put it in the package so that way you know exactly what was in there. And that's good because I get the scans, I immediately forward a client, I say, listen, it's there. I don't know what they're talking about. But it's happening so consistently, it's frustrating. It's making it very difficult and it makes us look terrible in front of the clients. It's almost as if they want us to look bad. However, I think it's just really incompetence and not paying attention. There was another case I read in one of the Facebook groups where an adjustment case was denied, a 245I adjustment case was denied. The officer said, no, just not knowing the law, denying it, that it's approvable when filed. If you go into 245 law, you have to have the I-130 or I-140 submitted before the required date, and it has to be approvable when filed. So when it was filed, was there a chance it could be approved? And there's some sort of standard like that. The officer didn't know it. They denied the case. So he's like, what should I do? And my regular thing was, okay, try to do a service motion reopen, tell them, and then escalate it 1 by 1 appeal. And everyone's like, no, just sue him or threaten to sue him. And he did that. He just said, listen, I'm going to mandamus this, and you're going to get charged. The government's going to force you to pay legal fees. And within 24 hours, they corrected it. So that's the way to go. Lawsuit, lawsuit, lawsuit. I'm going to talk about that more in a bit and having a separate podcast on that. But you see the atmosphere getting worse in other areas. Like CBP is sending out emails to people on tourist visas asking if someone had posted this. It was amazing. CBP has sent the B2 traveler an email saying if you're in the U.S. and you've overstayed, if you haven't filed for an extension or something like that, or you haven't left, let us know. Come appear at the CBP location for talking. For an interview. And so I was like, it was really scary that they're following up like that. To add to that, there's a BBC 4 program, I think it is. It's called Inside the American Embassy. And for the last year or two, the American Embassy, which they've switched in London, made into a new location, they were having a film crew there following everything. There's 4 episodes. I only caught the 1 episode I wanted to watch that was about the experience of the embassy when the travel ban happened. And so it's kind of a depressing episode to watch. And you even see the consular officers are like, frustrated because it's their job, their troops. They got to listen to what the general says. So it was very depressing watching that. But there was one part where there was a consular officer calling people on the phone numbers they give on the DS-160 to see if the person was in the U.S. or not. Because as they said, they don't always track exits from the U.S. if it's done by car, if it's done by a seaport. So they follow up to see if the person's there, and they call up and stuff like that. So they're really putting pressure for people to follow up and watching out for these tourist visa overstays. There was a stat that came out by Homeland Security that says in 2017, 600,000 people overstayed their U.S. visas. Now, the way they wrote this, it's not clear whether all those are overstays or maybe they did, extension of status, change of status, adjustment of status, or as the BBC show I talked about, whether they left by car or they left by seaport, so it's not tracked. That stat may have holes in it, but it's the headline, and it's going to cause a bunch of ruckus of people questioning the tourist visa program, which is such an economic boom to the country. It's crazy that they don't do that. As always, ICE is just going gangbusters. They've arrested people at domestic violence court. Other people going to the Fresno courthouse. It's been really tough. And there was a case where a Bank of America checking account was frozen because the bank was demanding that the family show proof of citizenship. This is like an American family that's been here for generations. So it's coming out everywhere. Now, the really messed up stuff is really coming from the Attorney General's office. There was a case, and this is really despicable. A fellow podcaster, Matthew Archambault, who has his own podcast, I think it's called Redirect, which is definitely a good podcast to listen to. He was actually the attorney on this, and there was a case where there was, I think it was not proper notice given to the lawyer and the applicant to prepare, so he went for a continuance, and the judge was going to grant it. But the Attorney General didn't want that to happen, so they recused the judge and put another judge in place and said no, they were controlling the decision. So the independence of, EOIR are judges, or they're really employees of the Justice Department. They aren't Article 3 independent judges. So the term judge, and I don't mean disrespect. I know the judges union. I've met with her leader. She's a judge here in Los Angeles, but is that a judge when it has no independence? I mean, judge is an arbiter. I guess you consider it like that. But the view people have of immigration judges is as if they're independent judges, and they're not. And now we got to question, is that a good system? Should judges be independent to the extent possible? I mean, even as it is right now, sometimes the independence of federal judges is under question. But should there be a movement? They're talking about abolish ICE. I don't know how far that's going to go, but how about creating independent judiciary for immigration? That might be something that's more cerebral kind of situation, but I think that might be something to push on to create more independence. At the very least, it'll help rebalance the court, because when you go into the court, everything is against the applicant. They're all on the same team, every aspect of it working against you, and really it's just sending people to a lion's den. It's not very fair. And along with that, the Justice Department is saying we can't call people undocumented anymore if they don't have proper status in the U.S. We have to refer to them as illegal aliens. So that terminology is coming back again. Now, how is this kind of attitude coming down to the man in the street? Well, let me give you a personal example. So, I collect emails. I do it much less than before because I only collect people who are going to follow my newsletter. So I have a newsletter. I collect emails as people contact me and give me permission to do that, so I can send them information on a monthly basis as a newsletter setting. In the past, I had a system where anyone ever contacted me would ask, do you want to go on the list, mail list? And they would say yes, and I would add them. Now, really, I just add people who are actual clients so they get follow-up. But really random people that contact me, I don't like to add them. It's been a couple months like that. But I had two foreign people who had contacted me for consultations, like in 2016, who are regulars on the listserv and view it. Now, last month, I sent a mail list newsletter out talking about the memos, the F1 student visa situation where you can overstay, and the idea that they're going to NTA people much faster, and also the fact that they're going to return cases that they consider not properly filed. And I had just short briefs on these memos that are coming out, like short paragraph on each of them, just breaking down the facts. Even if you listen to podcasts, I'm not jumping on either direction. I'm just saying the frustrations of the immigration practice. And I put links to the memo. So I sent it out. Within an hour, I got two people just cussing me out, saying, you're an effing liar, you're a piece of S, stop lying about our president. These are foreign people, foreign-born people that I contacted and needed immigration help. Just saying all this awful stuff to me and saying stop attacking the president. And I replied back and listen, did you click on the link that was there? Read the memo for yourself. And obviously they didn't respond. But that's the mentality we're going up against right now, and it's very scary that they didn't even click on the link to see what I'm talking about. They just automatically assume I'm fake news and I'm just blabbering. When the hyperlink was there to open up a DHS USCIS memo, and there's a synopsis on the top. So there wasn't anything I was adding. There was no commentary. There was no commentary other than saying be careful. That's the commentary. The rest was just factual. I'm not really trying to scare clients into different things, but that's the craziness of the population and the schism that's happening in the population right now. So it's like, how do you deal with that when just pure facts. It's not even like controversial, but what I'm saying is true or not. It's just a reality is like that. I don't know what's going to happen. Now, talking about the memos, they're making things really hard. Some of the memos that USCIS pulled back on and I think the NTA memo they're holding back on, but really they all should. There was one thing that they had done is for people on student visas who are working on third-party work sites and doing a STEM extension, they changed the website without any rulemaking, without any changes. It said you can't do that. Well, they got sued by a great attorney, our colleague Jonathan Wasden, and they quickly updated the website, I think yesterday, so that that reference is gone. It was an update in general to the student visa status and all that. So that was good. I'm actually going to be interviewing him in a few days, and hopefully get together and we'll put that out. I'm going to talk about how appeals and lawsuits and stuff work. That's definitely something I guess is mandatory as immigration practice. I've been wanting to get into that, but everything's been so busy, it's hard. And I'm kind of hesitant in learning a whole new field like that because I still have to spend so much time on immigration. So it's good to have experts that are into suing and know that, and then you could rely on if you don't want to expand your practice area. Now, one of the big news that's coming out, there's a lot of just reports and rumors right now, is President Trump's administration is pushing to make the public charge factor in immigration more difficult. For example, if you're adjusting status or if you're naturalizing, one thing that they're saying on the street is if you got Obamacare, for example, that could be a reason why you can't adjust or get that. So what's really frustrating is that people have already done this according to what's permitted. So if you go to the USCIS website, there's a public charge fact sheet. And it says it's not a public charge to get Medicaid, to get other health insurance and health services, to get CHIP, kids health insurance, to get SNAP, nutrition benefits, housing benefits. They specifically said these aren't problems. So for them to go back now and allude that they're going to start naturalizing people or not denaturalize, but give NTAs to people who did that or not adjust, when it was in the rules permitted to do something like that, it's ridiculous. And I've been getting a lot of emails about that when that news report came out. So I don't know how they're going to do that. If they're going to push that, it might have to be after the fact. From a certain date on, that's going to be an issue. But that's the stuff. And the embassies aren't getting any better. And even USCIS, right now, when you have a joint sponsor, they're really pushing this idea of asking if the joint sponsor is a relative or a close friend and proving that they're a relative or a close friend. When the statute, the INA, CFR, Adjudicator's Field Manual, the Foreign Affairs Manual, nothing in there says, they specifically say you don't have to be related. It could be anybody. It could be any third party. It's a contract that the third-party joint sponsor signs with the government. There's no place in there that requires, and it's not even necessary to say that it has to be a related or a friend. But they're doing that, and they're denying cases for that in CDJ. They're doing it domestically with USCIS. I haven't had one, thankfully. But this is just ridiculous that they're just making up things and imposing the denials on them because of that. They're also asking some visa applicants, this was in Bloomberg, that are coming here on different types of work visas. They're being asked if an American can do their job. Well, that's not part of the application. They've done what they needed to do, whether it's the perm process and newspapers say if there's any other Americans that can do the job, or in different kind of visa categories like L's, there's a reason why that person from that same company is coming to the U.S. There's no place in there to ask if an American can do their job. It's not in the statute. It's not in the regulations. So it's a shame that they're going above and beyond what their powers are to do these kind of things. And that's where these lawsuits come in. If you have cases that are getting denied, don't hesitate. There's American Immigration Council just released a white paper on lawsuits. Go to them and go to different groups. They have to be sued, The law is the law. We need to have consistency so we know what we're doing. It really just destroys our whole profession when there's this much massive inconsistency in their actions. And speaking of inconsistency in thought, actually, the State Department actually warned that DHS shouldn't end temporary protected status for certain countries in South America because it would strengthen MS-13 in the U.S. And abroad, and that's actually what it is. So the State Department goes against DHS, it's talking truth, but because it's so politicized at this point, things are becoming what exactly they're trying to prevent. Now, some practice issues and some more new stuff that are popping up. When you do medicals for adjustment cases, make sure to get an additional copy. So now I make it mandatory that when a client goes to a medical interview for the I-693, I think it is, for adjustment, the doctor has to give him a second copy for us to review. Why? Because recently I've been getting a lot of copies where doctors forget to check boxes on the vaccines, on the TB test, and so we go to the interview and the adjudicator's looking at it and all of a sudden they're like, well, this isn't completely filled out. RFE, you have to go to the doctor, get it again. It's just a mess, and these doctors aren't paying attention. You know, sometimes happens. Sometimes I forget to fill out certain boxes on I-45, but it's easy enough for me to just mark it at the interview. If it's a medical, you have to go, come back, and it could just create a lot of problems. Sometimes some USCIS adjudicators take forever to issue the RFE, so you can submit it to them. Some of them are really cool; you can just drop them off, but some of them like wait for our RFE and then who knows how long it's going to take. So check those medicals. Get used to seeing it too, because at first when I started reading them in more detail, it took me a while to figure out what's going on, what needs to be said, what's bad, what's good. But I mean, it didn't take that long, but it's something to get into and learn. Now, what's really frustrating is the visa bulletin. Now, we're ending the near end of the fiscal year, so it's getting worse, but it's going to be bad for a while. Family-based categories are barely moving forward, and employment-based categories have massive retrogression in EB1, 2, and 3. It's a nightmare. Some people, luckily I'd filed my adjustment cases in and they got in, so the clients are here. But if I had waited on certain cases to file the adjustment application after the I-140, because assuming, as it has been for so long, that the case will be current, the person will be out of status and not be able to adjust and take advantage of the authorized stay. So they'd have to leave the country. And now people are stuck. What do you do? Especially if you're from one of the countries that is on the travel ban. How do you deal with that? You can't leave the country. Hopefully the 180 days for 245K purposes doesn't, 180 days doesn't fill up. Now, going back to the issue of retrogression, the visa bulletin filling up, there has been a bill introduced in Congress, and some people, immigration lawyers included, are happy that they potentially may take off the per-country limits when they're calculating the visa bulletin numbers and how many visas are issued to each country. And it's a lot of back and forth about the philosophy and the morality of having per-country limitations, because obviously it hurts China and India and Philippines and Mexico, but it makes it really easy for other categories to stay current. I'm on, to a certain extent, on the pro side of not having, I guess, against removing per-country limitations, because China and India would soak up all of them. But on the other end, it is what it is. It's not fair to those countries because they have a bigger population and their people are people. So it's kind of a messed up issue. But as it is right now, if the per-country limitations go, pretty much no one in the world could immigrate to the U.S. except for certain countries, because they're going to be filling up the box. But at the same time, there's people in India waiting all these years in line just to get in, and then some neighboring country could go in with the current visa bulletin. So that's not fair either. I don't know what the answer to that is, but that's a massive shift and something that wasn't talked about that moved forward rapidly in Congress. We'll see what that happens. Now, it was an article I read by Quartz or QZ.com that said fewer people want U.S. citizenship, but the line keeps getting longer. They had a graph that showed citizenship application numbers are actually going down in the last year, but the lines, as you all know, are getting longer and longer. So that's kind of a weird situation, but it kind of makes sense. They're being more hesitant in approving. They're looking at things in more detail. They're waiting longer. Even after the interview, sometimes it takes longer. Before, most adjustment case and naturalization case would be approved on the spot, and they would shake their hand and you leave happy that your case got approved. Now, majority of my cases, they say we need to do additional research or this and that. None of them get approved. Most of them don't get approved on the spot. That's a massive change that's happened in the last 6 months. Now, on the DACA front, there's a judge that ruled that DACA must go forward, then pulled back and said, no, you can't submit it. So that's just a nightmare right now. If you're one of the dreamers right now, it's terrible. Moving forward, some congresspeople, thankfully, are blasting the fact that people who are in immigration detention and they call out to their families, and this goes in the prison system too, I've heard about this before, they have to pay exorbitant prices per minute, kind of like back in the day in the 80s when they used to charge, if you wanted to call, out of state, they would charge like $1 a minute, some crazy numbers. They're charging these people, poor people that can't afford it in these immigration detention centers, to be able to call out to their family members, charging exorbitant prices. So it's really unfair taking advantage of people like that, especially nowadays with technology. It's not needed to pay that much for phone service, but they're getting away with it. Now, if you have a practice and you have people that are coming to the U.S. that, let's put aside, it has to do with pot, put aside they're smokers or users or sellers. If they're investors in the pot industry, they could be banned from entering the U.S. because they're participating in illegal activities. So be careful of that. There was a guy in Nevada, actually, that was from Israel. It was in the news. That came to the U.S. and he was in the medicinal marijuana industry in Israel. Legit stuff. Long story short, it came up during the adjustment interview that he was in that industry and he was denied and removed. So that's something terrible that's going to continue, even though so many states, I think a majority of the union now accepts marijuana, at least in the medical form. The State Department's actually acting up too for transgender rights or against transgender rights. A few transgender women had their passports revoked once they made the switch and changed the label, the sex label from male to female. And so surprisingly, that's happening. It was out of nowhere. Now, going back to administrative processing I talked about earlier, I've seen administrative processing times for Iranian cases always take 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. The same is going on for Iraqi cases. There was a report that the Pentagon is actually worried because the people in Iraq who are supporting U.S. troops as translators are undergoing such a strong administrative processing, SAO, I forgot what the long-term what that acronym is for, that they're deciding not to help U.S. troops because they're afraid they're going to get stuck there and have this traitor label put on them. And so the Pentagon's even worried about how slow processing for administrative processing is happening for people that have helped the U.S. and on their side. So the administrative process situation needs a bigger budget. I think it's probably intentional. They just don't want to do anything because, just put some more money in there, do some better background checks, get it done. It doesn't need to take 2 years to do something like that. On a funny note, semi-funny note, there was an EB1A case that was denied and appealed to the AAO. Interestingly, what had happened was it was a Shaolin Buddhist temple monk, and the case was approved, EB1A, met everything, but the director questioned things and the legitimacy of things. And one of the main reasons was this guy was a Buddhist monk who's supposed to be, stay celibate. But in his, DS-260 or in his background document, said it was married. So they said, well, how's this person a monk and is legit, and then they're married at the same time? So that was one of the main reasons they denied the case. So when you do an EB1, you got to think outside the box and know more about all aspects of the case to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. That is it for the legal stuff I want to talk about, but then it goes to the side notes about business. So actually I finally incorporated my law firm after 4.5 years. I made a S Corp. I'm in California, and so there's not much meaning that comes with that because as attorneys we have liability anyways. I guess having liability insurance is more important than creating a corporation for those kind of purposes for protecting yourself. Now I'm a solo. Maybe if I had staff and stuff, having a corporate form would be more important. But one of the main reasons I did it is because of some savings I'll have based on my tax structure that's going to happen, or that has happened now. And so that's something I recommend you looking into. As soon as you make more than a certain amount, probably more than 50, 60, going towards 100 and above, incorporating is going to be good, but that's one of those state matters where you have to talk with local accountants and local lawyers about that. But it took a lot of work, and it's kind of expensive. I have to pay more taxes, do a lot of paperwork, a lot of filing, more expensive accountant, all this kind of stuff. So at most, I'm probably going to save a few $1,000s, but I thought it'd be worth it just to do it and be a professional corporation, just because I see everyone else is doing, frankly. But so it took a little bit. I think I'm going to do a special on how to do that in California, just to help go through the steps of all the things I had to do. But it should be good, and yeah, hopefully if it saves a few thousand, it saves a few thousand. And finally, there was an article I read today. It was about 7-Eleven franchise stores. You all know 7-Eleven. They have Slurpees at the corner. They're quickie marts that you could go to and get food. So what's happening right now is the highest number of franchises for sale at 7-Eleven in many years or decades has happened right now. And the reason is because 7-Eleven got a new corporate owner, and they're increasing the franchise fees that happen and eating up a lot of the money that the revenue that people are getting. Now, the person that was interviewed in there, was an Indian gentleman, immigrated, the American dream kind of story, got his first 7-Eleven, grew it, had like 4 or 5. All the families living good off these stores. And all of a sudden, when these franchise fees come, it takes out a large chunk of this profit that he's trying to sell, and he has to go to a new industry. And it really popped in my head, things may be good in whatever business you're in. If you're an immigration lawyer, your marketing and your referrals are growing and you're doubling every year and you're being successful, and it looks like it's all rainbows. But you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And even if you go 10, 20, 30 years of success, things could drop off on a dime and just drop off or a cliff like that. So it's really important to always have an exit plan or a secondary plan of revenue streams to keep you going. So if you are making money and making an income off of being an immigration attorney, save 10, 20, 25% of that separately, after taxes, and put it aside and to figure out what you're going to do. Not just the savings, because in this inflationary environment we're in, with gas prices rising, savings itself isn't going to do much. But how are you going to take that money and reinvest it in something that's not directly related to your office, so that you have something to go if something happens to you, or if the law practice shuts down? Who knows with Trump? They might just ban immigration. I mean, this guy, anything is possible at this point from this man. And we look historically what they did to the Japanese internment camps. Whenever something serious, like a war thing happens, they could easily shut down the border. I mean, why not? And so then all our livelihoods are gone. So always, it's kind of like live, but always know that you're going to die. And that's the thing. Practice the law, but know that that's going to potentially end or will end. So I'll have that alternative mindset of what else could you do? What other skills can you use to bolster your income, to support yourself and your family in various different scenarios that pop up. Thank you so much for listening again to this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. If you're listening on iTunes, I'd love it if you could leave a positive 5-star review and a comment. Also, if you watch on YouTube, a like and a thumbs up and a subscribe. The YouTube channel is the Immigration Lawyers channel. There'll be links to it on the immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com, which is a new centralized location that I have. And my email is info@jqqlaw.com. Feel free to reach out and talk with me. Always happy to hear from listeners to help in any way I can. Well, until next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.